There are actually a lot of red flags or warning signs that a stock market crash could occur in the next couple weeks, but people inside the Federal Reserve Bank and the US Treasury working at least 4 different plunge protection teams are trying to stop the normal warning signals. So the volatility index, or VIX, it got up to 30 early Monday morning. It has since been smashed down. There's been a lot of comments in the last couple hours from financial professionals talking about blatant market manipulation, smashing down to the VIX, buying of S&P 500 futures contracts right before the market closed on Tuesday to try to prop up the stock market. But there are a lot of red flags, a lot of warning signals that normally occur either right before a stock market top or right at the top before a stock market crash. So over the last couple months, we've had the Federal Reserve Bank scandals with insider selling. The Federal Reserve is claiming that they're not buying stock anymore. I'm guessing that they've probably been buying out of the money puts. Those guys are so corrupt, those banksters. Those PhD economists at the Federal Reserve Bank are so corrupt, especially the ones at the top. But we're seeing insider selling. We're seeing hedge funds that were short, whether that was Dr. Michael Burry or Russell Clark's hedge fund, that has lost an enormous amount of asset under management. It's drastically contracted. So these bearish funds blew up or were closed, or they closed out their short positions right before a stock market crash. In the past, this happened a lot. And then we got the story out in the last week or so that a lot of corporate CEOs insider selling has hit a record high, $69 billion worth of stock by many large tech. The FAANG stocks, if you watch the videos that my friend Aaron Basil makes for my YouTube channel, This Week in Charts, he has been talking for months about how the FAANG stocks, so Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, Tesla, some of the others, that these handful or so of tech stocks have propped up the stock market. And the CEOs of these companies, the higher executives, are enormous net sellers of these because of stagflate tax lie and how the US government, the US Treasury, they are going after, with higher taxes, rich people, people who own a lot of assets, business owners. So you're seeing, before the tax laws change even more, before higher tax laws go into effect, you're seeing even more insider selling. And this type of insider selling is normally what occurs prior to a stock market crash. So yes, in December, there's normal tax law selling, but this is not normal tax law selling. A record $69 billion of stock. You're seeing people like Elon Musk and others talk about how if taxes go up, he'll sell even more stock. He's talked about that on Twitter. So there are a lot of red flags, a lot of indicators that, at least in the past, would have signaled a stock market crash. The Fed has tried to smash the VIX. If the VIX goes back up to the mid to high 30s, though, that's almost Lehman Brothers levels, it will blow up the leverage short vol trade. So we'll see what happens in the next couple weeks. But in the last couple hours, we've had a lot of financial professionals I respect tweet out that there was blatant stock market manipulation before the end of the stock market close today on Tuesday. And then what happened to the VIX, how it was smashed down so suddenly, when we're seeing tons and tons of stories lately about bond market volatility. And this is a big, big red flag. So you have Jeff Snyder talking about the Eurodollar futures. For the average person, an average investor, business owner on Main Street, the Eurodollar futures doesn't really matter. What matters is that many business owners are being killed with much, much higher costs, supply chain problems, so supply side problems, and taxes. And the real economy, the consumer, cannot deal with higher and higher costs, especially for food and energy. If you're a business owner and your input costs are rising, there's no guarantee with stagflation and shrinkflation that you can pass it on to your customer. And this is why the real economy, the numbers are getting worse and worse, because the real economy cannot deal with this type of stagflation. And then you also have governments, especially the US government, trying to raise taxes on so many different things too, all levels of the US government. So we'll see if a stock market crash happens before the end of the year. I would watch the VIX, because these articles about bond market volatility, That means that there's problems with these over-leveraged bond trades from hedge funds, family offices, and portfolio managers at banks. The VIX spiking into the 30s is a very good signal that the leverage short vol trade, which is over $3 trillion in size, could blow up. And that means margin calls, and that means selling. And then it becomes a vicious cycle of even more selling of assets. So we'll see if we get a stock market crash before the year is over. We could also get the January effect that if there is a quick stock market crash, we could get a big rally sometime in January or early February, because traditionally stocks do rally in January with the January effect after December tax law selling. Finally, if you like content like this and want to help keep content like this free so it doesn't all end up behind a paywall, there are now over 190 articles and audio podcasts behind the paywall, exclusive for my patrons, all for the cost of a Starbucks cup of coffee per month, only $5 a month. And just in the last 22 or so weeks, there are now 35 new articles and audio podcasts, again, all for only $5 a month. I think it is one of the best deals out there, including 4 new audio podcasts and including a very long one I just finished of 25 minutes long, going in depth on the Hot Moddin feasibility study and the Hot Moddin environmental permits, the good news for Sandstorm Gold for patrons in the last couple hours. So please check that out. So there's 4 new audio podcasts of 15 minutes or longer in just the last 2 weeks on a uranium market update, Q3 earnings for gold miners. Their costs are rising. The royalty and streaming companies don't have to deal with double-digit cost increases continuing. The royalty and streaming companies like Franco-Nevada and Wheaton Precious Metals are doing very, very well. And then also a geopolitical podcast for mining companies, because a lot of these governments, whether it's in South America, Mexico, or Turkey, are increasing royalty taxes on miners. And that's the new normal going forward for all these governments, is stagflate tax lie. There's a lot of good content, research, financial education, and analysis behind the paywall. So that's all for only $5 a month. I think it is one of the best deals out there. Please check that out. So if I could wrap up this short little video very quickly, the plunge protection team, or one of the 4 or 5 or 6 different plunge protection teams, Dr. Pippa Malmgren and Jim Rickards have talked about these in the past. At least one of them is just academics, but there's legit plunge protection teams. One of them came into the market and smashed the shit out of the VIX, whacked it real good, and bought and tried to prop up the U.S. stock market prior to the close on Tuesday to try to decrease the odds of a stock market crash in the next couple weeks. We'll see how lucky they are. I would watch the VIX. If the VIX gets, because we've seen these articles for the last couple weeks come out about bond market volatility. Danielle DiMartino Booth is tweeting today about bond market volatility. If we see continued bond market volatility, whether that's in corporate bonds in other countries or government bonds in the U.S. and other countries, bond market volatility is bad because of the amount of leverage that these hedge funds, family offices, and portfolio managers at banks have put on with their trades. And that means margin calls, and that means selling, and that means a vicious cycle. So we'll see what happens with that. I would keep an eye on that. But the more bond market volatility we have, a spike in the VIX, and these other stories that we're seeing with enormous amounts of insider selling, stagflate tax lie is killing the consumer. It is killing small business. And governments, politicians, bureaucrats, and central banksters are not the ones being hurt by these horrible draconian policies of theft.